After a couple of weeks hiatus, we're back with another episode of This Week in Plymouth. For Saturday, November 18th, I'm your host, Dan Salzer. Starting off this week, the Select Board met this past Monday evening. The meeting opened with a pinning ceremony for new police officer Rachel Collins. Her addition to the force signals that the police department is fully staffed.
We have a new police officer, Officer Rachel Collins.
Good evening. I would like to introduce Rachel Collins. She is our first ever 13th police officer here in the town of Plymouth. So Rachel's position will make it so we're full staffed. And Rachel will be attending the New Hampshire Full-Time Police Academy in January, which is 16 weeks. And after completion of that, she'll come back and continue her field training program, which she's currently in right now. And she'll be a full-fledged member of the police department. So we're very excited. And her family is here, and her husband and children would like to pin her uniform.
Get in there, Ann.
I'm trying. Nice job.
Well done.
The board also announced that the town auctions for the house on Fairgrounds Road will be today, November 18th at 3 p.m. The auction will take place in the town hall meeting room upstairs. Following that, the board held a discussion with Jim Roberge to discuss the 2022-23 town audit. The select board was also able to meet with State Senator Sue Prentice, where she gave the board updates of what's happening at the state level, while the board discussed the lack of state funding at higher education and how that has affected the town.
Senator Sue Prentice, who has sat very patiently through all of our budget discussions.
I have a few things that I'd like to share with you. I don't want to take too much of your time tonight. I wanted to just talk a little bit about some of the things you may have interest, primarily the questions for me, but I thought that this would be a great way just to make the introduction. Some of the things I think that are important, and when we're looking at this year, we've just moved out of a budget year, and Representative Bolton may have briefed you on this, but our $15.9 billion state budget actually passed both the House and the Senate, and this and was signed into law. And this is the first time in a number of years that we saw that happening, and was really focused on a working families type of budget, and I believe was responsive to some of the things that I hear from, not only from the previous District 5, but the combination of District 5 that has to do with housing, that has to do with child care, that has to do with workforce, which ties into housing and child care. And then there's the downshifting from the state to the municipal government, and some of the ways that we've worked to offset that. And again, based on my background, I'm super sensitive to it. Here's the thing. Probably 60% of your budget is education? Is it? 62% was in Lebanon. So you're probably, everyone's pretty close to that statewide. And one of the ways, so there's, it's double-edged. First of all, we have two Claremont lawsuits that we still haven't we haven't answered the call of those lawsuits, which is to adequately and fairly fund education in the state. And now we have Conval, and then we have the Rand, I think it's the Rand-Volinsky case. So there's the funding side of this, which is significant because it's a regressive system. I think as you probably already know, you have a certain amount that comes to you from the state, and then with the adequacy grants, $4,800, $5,000, and then there's a little more added on top of that depending on if there's special education, free and reduced meals, and then you use the SWEPT funds to fill that difference. Okay, and sometimes it even goes beyond that because you're using your local property taxes to actually fill between what the state gives you and what it costs you to educate per student. So there's no easy answer. And, I see as we're struggling through, say, things like school choice and education freedom accounts and seeing the significant potential for money to leave the system, what strikes me is that we've never really solved the problem. So I don't have a particular answer to that. I know that it is it's an ideological it's an ideological, there are differences of opinion, but I think in fairness to everyone, while all of this is like, how are we going to do things differently, we should actually do what the Supreme Court has asked us to do. And then children wouldn't have differences based per zip code on what's available to them. So in serving towns like Lebanon and Hanover, say they have multiple languages. This doesn't make one community better than another, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but they will have multiple languages that they can actually study, but in another community within this very same district, they might only have one that's available to them because that's all that they can afford. And because of the weight on the property tax piece. So that's, I am on Senate Education. We spend more time, we do talk about funding, but we tend to spend more time talking about competency-based education, talking about basically, unfortunately, discussions about what school boards what their authority should and should not be. And again, I think the school boards know, like I think you all know best, what happens locally. Talking about charter schools, talking about the real estate related to, if you had a group of schools like we did in Lebanon and we merged them all together, and then we had 3 school buildings. And we worked with the city and the school board worked to sell those buildings, and they're now mixed-use properties. So we have housing in them, we have dental offices in them, we even have a Montessori school in them. But in the last 3 years, we've taken steps backwards this is just in my thinking, is that we've taken that authority away from really you and your school boards, because now it has to go to the charter schools first. I'm not opposed to public charter schools, but I actually think you can figure out where you want to spend that money, that we shouldn't decide who goes to the front of the line. So we spend a lot of time talking about that. There was big work done 3 years ago and a commission that had $500,000 price tag that told New Hampshire exactly what it needed to do to fund education, and that was just struck down. In fact, we disbanded, not that I was in favor, we disbanded that commission rather than trying to put more of an effort into it. So there's wide disagreement, and it's very unfair.
I mean, we've been talking for 15 years, 20 years about reducing the costs of all of these universities, but the state hasn't stepped up and funded them.
No.
I mean, we're 50 out of 50. Like,
if you doubled what we spend,
we'd still be 50 out of 50. I mean, we can talk about reducing the cost of education, but if the state doesn't step up and increase the funding side, well, all you're doing is a race to the bottom. All you're doing is trying to zero your higher education in this state. I have a kid who's a senior in high school. We're doing all the pricing games, and I'll tell you, in-state education for him is not a cost reduction. I can send him to the University of Southern Maine. It's going to be cheaper than UNH. I can send him to a school in Massachusetts, a school in Vermont, a school in Rhode Island. All of these are going to be cheaper schools than our in-state higher education. We can talk about cost reduction, but that's not a winning path, right? Like, having a higher education, I mean, it hurts our community too. As the state doesn't fund Plymouth State's not willing to then give money to our community. They've reduced the amount of money they give to our community, and they say, well, the state doesn't give us any money. How could we possibly give you any money?
The state isn't incentivizing the university system to be able to do that. The Board of Trustees controls the tuition rates. I think it's high time that the state steps in and does something more proactive.
I hear you, and I'll take that back. I wish I had an answer for it
Yeah,
tonight.
no,
I don't.
I didn't expect you to have the magic bullet to the biggest problem our community has faced in 2 decades.
We just
That would
want
be
to make
asking a
sure
lot,
that
Sue.
we just want to make sure the message isn't going to be, we should just close the university system because we're not going to pay for it.
Correct.
Any other questions for Senator Prentice?
Thank you for having me. You know where to find me.
Appreciate
I'll
it.
leave some
Thank you.
business cards with you, and stay in touch.
Select Board member Neil MacGyver brought up concerns for the crosswalk on Langdon Street by Fox Park, saying it's hard for drivers to see pedestrians on the blind corner, both coming down the hill and up the hill.
All right, Neil. Safety concern on Langdon Street and surrounding intersections.
I have concerns about an intersection on Langdon Street. In my opinion, it's unsafe. the increased amount of traffic is ultimately going to result in a tragedy, in my opinion.
Which intersection? Yeah?
It's just below the Mayhew Funeral Home. You have, it's a four-way intersection. You have Prince Haven Apartments, which comes in from the west side, and you have Fox Park Apartments, which comes in from the east side. And you have a 45-degree angle. It's basically a blind corner. You can't see around the corner either way you're coming. And the worst part of it is the ingress and egress from Fox Park Apartments has a zero sight line. You cannot see up Langdon Street to the north at all. There are times when it's light, and there are times when it's very heavy, and there are times when people travel very fast around that corner. Mm-hmm. And I would like to see the sight line improved.
I used to live at 13 Langdon. I owned that house for a long time. And you're right, that's a terrifying area. I had to back out of that driveway every day because there was no space to turn around.
Predominantly, the traffic is responsible.
Mm-hmm.
Many people are careful, and there are enough people who aren't.
I think you're right. Let's get some data. Let's do some observation. John, your comments. Neil, your comments. And come up with a plan after we've gathered some information.
The Water and Sewer Commissioners met on Tuesday evening this past week. The board reviewed the proposed budget for 2024 and discussed important dates leading up to the town voting and its annual meeting in March.
So we've looked at the calendar and we think that the best time to hold our budget and rates hearing will be January 23rd. That gives us a window of opportunity, should there be storms or something, to still get it in
before the deadline.
Before the deadlines, yes, for the report and everything. So if everybody thinks that their calendars work for January 23rd, we'd like to go ahead and put those ads in the paper for that. January 24th starts the date for candidates to file, and it runs through February 2nd. And we have a commissioner seat, the clerk, and the moderator all up this year. Mm-hmm. Voting day would be March 12th, and our annual meeting would be scheduled, if we follow our traditional, would be Thursday, March 14th at 6 p.m. Unless anybody has anything that they know of that's going to stop the annual meeting or the budget and rate hearing, we'll set those dates for the newspaper.
The next commissioners' meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, December 12th at 5 p.m. The Planning Board met this past Thursday. Starting off the meeting, the board continued its hearing for the self-storage facility located on Hutchins and Fairgrounds Road. After addressing all the concerns from the board and the public, the site plan was approved.
Site plan review from Horizons Engineering on behalf of property owner Slater Holdings, LLC, to develop self-storage facility with an office and associated site improvements on parcel 207076, located on Hutchins Road, Fairgrounds Road. And so this was an application we saw at our last business meeting, and we'd asked for some clarification and some studies and such, and so we're going to continue with that.
Yeah, I apologize for not being present on the last meeting. I believe Chris is here as well from Horizons to speak on the engineering aspects of everything we talked about. I just wanted to kind of introduce myself, and then I think Chris starting on the engineering, on the comments that he sent over.
Yeah, we received the letter from KV Partners, the town's engineer, early this week, and worked to address the 5 comments that he made. Several of them were just drafting related errors that we have corrected.
So with a light study, the blue is the wide range, showing the high level light. We spoke with the landscape architecture to really preserve what the community and the board mentioned last time about not having overly powerful light. So what we were proposing was having almost a lighter light going on at the nighttime and installing the motion sensors to avoid unnecessary lighting at night hours.
The security so people can see through.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I can see that, but I mean, no pun intended, but I feel like that's putting the burden on the abutters to be policing the property. Yeah, I mean,
I think my perspective is it just keeps the honest people honest. You know, if you're shielded from view, you're more likely to try and get away with something that you wouldn't if you perceive that anyone could see you. You know, I think from a site owner's perspective, I could see the advantage.
Yes, so the operating hours, the office will be open to take, what was I going to say? Potential renters to go in for office to be able to use the space from 8:30 to 4:30 is when the office will be open. However, access to the storage units itself will be 24/7.
Chris Woods, 157 Fairgrounds. I'm pleased to hear that there is the motion detector. That's good. I guess I still have a little bit of a concern about the 24-hour access. If it's contractor-oriented storage, I can envision contractors coming in 4 o'clock in the morning, loading vehicles, da-da-da-da-da. So just going to point that out. Secondly, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the current terrain of the property. Once again, just pointing this out, it is something of a bowl in there. And if you look at your as-built, they're raising this up, probably not surprisingly, on a plateau. And I'm kind of curious, like in the alteration of terrain, how far outside of this actual construction area are you having to go to move fill to make that happen?
Yes, we are planning to raise that pad to make it nice and level. We haven't shown it coming from on site. The intention, I think, would be that the material would be brought in, but certainly that's something that we could look at revising, maybe taking it from a little farther to the north there.
I would make a motion that given the findings of fact, I would move that we approve the Slater Holdings application for Combs self-storage on Fairgrounds Road, with the conditions that all appropriate permits be obtained, that the boundary line adjustment that affects this parcel be recorded, and that all the conditions of approval be met, and that Plymouth Village Water and Sewer approval be obtained to serve the property. One additional condition of approval is that the applicant enter into a development agreement with the town and provide funds in escrow to allow for the construction inspection by the town's engineer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The application is approved.
The board also held a public hearing for the 2024 to 2030 capital improvement plan. The board discussed recommendations from the CIP committee during the hearing, which ultimately were approved after little public comment. For the first time since 2019, Plymouth Fire and Rescue held a pinning ceremony at the station this past Wednesday evening. The pinning recognizes Deputy Chief Kevin Pierce since rejoining the station, and also the 5 new firefighters. Taking a look at some of the upcoming announcements, reminder that town offices will be closed on Thursday and Friday, November 23rd and 24th for the Thanksgiving holiday. Also, Pease Public Library will have reduced hours from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on that Wednesday and the following Saturday after Thanksgiving. The Recreation Department has kicked off this year's Thanksgiving Madness. Be sure to head over to the Recreation Department Facebook page and comment what your favorite kind of pie is and see if it makes the cut for this year's Champion. An indoor movie night has also been announced by the Police and Recreation Department for Friday, December 1st in the elementary school gymnasium. The featured film is a 2018 animation, The Grinch, featuring Benedict Cumberbatch, Cameron Seeley, and Rashida Jones. There is no registration required and free popcorn will be provided. So be sure to head over to the PES Gymnasium for a night of fun with the whole family. The calendar of events for this year's Hometown Holiday Celebration has been posted. You can see the full list of events over on the Recreation Department Facebook page. Including in the events is the 12th annual Jingle Bell 5K on Saturday, December 2nd. Check-in will begin at 8 a.m. with the event starting at 9 a.m. behind the elementary school. Registration is required, so if you're interested, be sure to scan the QR code on your screen and sign up before December 1st. Please note there is a registration fee. Also on Saturday from 1 to 3 p.m., the Recreation Department will hold the Holiday Puzzler event in the elementary school library. Up to 8 teams can compete to see who can finish a 500-piece holiday-themed puzzle. Registration is required, so head over also to the Recreation Department website to sign up your team today and secure your spot in the competition. Wrapping up that Saturday, December 2nd, will be the annual holiday parade on Main Street. The parade will start at 5 p.m. and go from the Rotary and travel south on Main Street. Be sure to come out and enjoy the festive night. There'll be a blood drive on Tuesday, November 21st at PRHS from 8:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. for any parents, faculty, and staff members. For any students wishing to participate in the blood drive, parent permission forms are available on the high school website. The National Technical Honor Society will be holding a holiday drive for the Bridge House organization. Donations will be accepted until December 20th. Donations can be dropped off at the high school and can include, but are not limited to, canned goods, bed sheets, and dish detergent. Pease Public Library will be hosting the event Make a Vinyl Record Clock on Monday, December 4th and Thursday, December 7th for adults. The library will be providing a variety of tools to decorate your records with, and will also have some records available for those who don't have any. Be sure to sign up today to secure your place. It's time now to take a look at sports as the fall season continues. Congratulations are in order to the Bobcat football team after a come-from-behind 21-20 win at home last weekend over Souhegan in the state semifinals. The Bobcats advanced to battle top-seeded Pelham in the championship game this afternoon at Stello Stadium in Nashua. Kickoff is set for 1 p.m. And for those looking to watch the game at home, please note that the game will only be available live online through the NFHS network. PBTV's coverage will air on Monday, November 20th at 1 p.m. after the 48-hour hold. The game will also be live on the radio with our friends at Oldies 92.9 and on AM 1300 WPNH. Looking into next week, the Conservation Commission will be the only meeting in town next week on Tuesday, November 11th at 7 p.m. Thank you for tuning in to This Week in Plymouth. Remember, you can watch full replays of town meetings, PRHS sports, and other original content on our YouTube channel and also on channel 1302 throughout the weeks. For all of us here at Pemmy Baker TV, thank you for joining us. For our executive producer, Jonathan Picard, I'm Dan Salzer. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving break, and we'll see you next time on This Week in Plymouth.